and welcome to the Gothic Unicorn. Now, if you've been watching my videos for a while, you'll know that I really like using things that would otherwise go to waste. And so what I've decided to do is to start a sort of themed set of videos that are about using up things that would otherwise go in the bin. Now, I did some of this ages ago on my Facebook page, my Trash to Miniature Treasure, and I thought it was probably time to give it a go on video. Now, some of the things I've mentioned before, but I will be recapping in here, and yeah, we'll see how this goes. Now, today I'm starting with the packaging that you get medication in, these blister packs. Normally what you do is you push your tablet through from the blister side, it comes out of the foil on the other side, and you get your medication. Now, obviously, as you can see, I've peeled all the foil off this one, and I've got some nice sections that I can reuse. Now, this is going through my box of stuff I've put aside, all the different types that I could find, different sizes from small up to quite big, different shapes, round, elongated. There's all different kinds of things depending upon what medication you or your household takes. Now, in this house, I'm fortunate, stroke not fortunate, that both myself and my husband take medication on a regular basis. And I'll be honest, when you take something that's a kind of generic medication, which is what I take, you do sometimes get a different brand. And if I get a different brand, the first thing I want to do is to see what the packaging inside the box is like, to see if I want to save any of it. Sad, I know. Then, once it's used, I clean it up. I wipe them down with a damp paper towel, because I don't want any residue from anything going into the water stream. And I put them away. Sometimes I peel the foil off ready, sometimes I don't. But this is what I'm left with, and these I find really, really useful. Now, the only thing I will say is you do have to actually cut the foil. I just use a fingernail rather than pushing them through, because if you push them through, as you can see with some of these foil ones, they get a bit mussed up. Now, these I can actually straighten out a bit. These are quite good, but others it's not so easy. If you put a dent in some of these plastic ones, you're never going to get rid of it. So this is the sort of thing I'm going to be using. I have got one other piece. This is not from medication. This is actually a bit of packaging from a set of false nails for children. Yes, they do such a thing. It came from a pound shop, and as you can see, it's given me 12 squares of different sizes. It is the entire thing. It's all still in one piece, but I figure I can cut these out very, very carefully using a craft knife, and I can use them. So anything that comes in individual little packages, have a look at it, because you might be able to reuse it. Now, perhaps the most obvious way that you can use the blister packs is for cookware, more particularly bakeware. Now, this is a little pile that I've pulled out of my witch's cottage, and this is quite simply 5 different bits of blister packs painted up and stuck together. So I've got a couple of square ones, some round ones, and then I've got a more interesting shaped one, that I thought looked a bit like a little loaf pan. That's actually this one. I've only used the one out of this, as you can see. And then there must have been something interesting there that I've decided I needed. So, I don't know. I don't know what it was, but obviously I had a use for it. Anyway, I've covered how I do these in a previous video, but it is really simple, and I'm just going to run through it with you now so that you can see what I do. The first thing to do is to cut out your selected pieces. Now, you can use a craft knife if that's what you're happiest with. I will sometimes use a craft knife to cut them apart, but then I trim them with some sharp, fine scissors. These are very old, but they're still pretty sharp, and they were non-stick. The non-stick's coming off now, but they're the best little scissors that I've ever got, and I would love to get more. You see, they're falling apart. I actually picked these up from a local supermarket, but they don't do them anymore. I've got about 3 pairs of them about, and I hoard them. I don't let anybody borrow them. Anyway, once you've got your piece that you're going to turn into your bakeware, the next step is to paint it. Now, what I do is I go for a matte black acrylic paint. Now, these paints, I happen to know, dry matte. They're my favourite, not that I can get them anymore, not locally. And all you want to do is you want to put a thin coat all over. Now, because this is plastic and it is shiny, it is important that your first coat is thin. It's going to look messy. It's not going to look like a finish that anybody would want, but this is the best way. Do it like this, and the thinner bits I put on here are already starting to dry. The thicker bit that I got there, not so much, so I will wipe that off. I will put another coat over the top after it's dried. Now, it is simple as that. You've just got to repeat until the entire thing, inside and outside, is painted black. You could paint it grey and then paint over it with silver if you want a nice, new, shiny looking bakeware. But in my scenes, I tend to prefer them looking a bit worn. And if you've got old bakeware of this kind, you'll know that it quite often sort of builds up a kind of patina. And that's what I'm trying to mimic with my paintwork. Now, once it's all covered in the black, I'm going to add the metallic. Now, I've used various blister packs in the past to make little metal bowls for various things. And I mostly do it the same way. Black undercoat and then my metallic paint on top. Now, I'm using silver metallic today because it goes with the bakeware sort of idea. And all I want is a little bit of paint on the brush. I've actually taken most of it off. I've got a piece of paper towel that I'm doing that, and all I'm going to do is I'm just going to sort of dot it on, dab it on. That's a better word, isn't it? Dab it. This isn't quite dry brushing. You will have a bit more paint than that, but what you want is you want to get an irregular coverage, and because you're not putting much paint on, you can go back afterwards and put another small coat over the top. And then to do the sides, I'd basically do the same thing. This paintbrush is playing up a bit, and I'll have bits where there's more and bits where there's less, and I'm just going to carry on with this all the way around my little baking tin until it's all finished. And that is how you complete a very basic but quite old looking piece of bakeware. Now obviously if you wanted to go for a nice shiny, say copper look like you get in Victorian kitchens, you use copper paint. You don't go for the dirty look underneath, you go for a nice smooth look. It all depends on what you're going for. And in my various properties, I think worn is most definitely the order of the day. Sometimes you will see some blister packaging and it will remind you of something. And that is the case with me and this one. Now this one reminds me of pie dishes. In particular, a kind of pie dishes that we get in the UK that are metal, they're enamelled, and they always come in a very particular colourway. You get all different pieces in this finish, but these remind me of the pie tins. And so I've actually done these as pie tins before, and I'm just going to give you a quick what's it as to how. But I've actually got a real life version of one. Now this is an enamelled dish and it's white with a blue rim. You can get these pieces from smaller than this up to big roasting tins, but this is my kind of inspiration. So I've cut out one of these and I've painted it white. Now you don't need to see me painting them, but here it is, all painted with white. And all I need to do now is I need to add a bit of blue around the edge. Now when I did these for my witch's cottage, I actually put pie crust inside it. I made a pie crust out of some air dry clay and I've actually filled them, so it looks like they've got pies waiting to go in the oven. But all I'm going to do is I'm going to get a little bit of blue paint, which is about as close as I can get to the original colour, and I'm going to get a thin brush and just put a little ring around the top. And here we have my tiny little finished pie dish. Now if you want it to actually look shiny, more like the original enamelled one, you could use a gloss paint, or of course you could put a little bit of Mod Podge over the top afterwards. That probably wouldn't be a bad idea if you're intending on moving this about, but this kind of thing generally gets glued down in my projects, so I'm not too concerned. But it is just a really simple way to add a little touch of realism to your doll's house. Before I move on to my next make, I want to just talk about a couple of other things you can do that I'm not going to illustrate today. Now, one of the main things I see people using blister packs of medication for is to make like a cupcake muffin tin. Now, I've never been fortunate enough to get a medication. Okay, I'll rephrase that. Medication packaging that would work for that in 1/12 scale. They're just far too big. Now this one, which is about the smallest one that I have in my collection, I could, if I cut it down into the middle, make a 6-hole pan for a 1/6 scale doll, a fashion doll. That's not the scale I work in. I'd need it to be smaller, so it doesn't quite work. I have, however, used this scale in a previous video to make a little chalice. I glued a bugle bead to the bottom of the blister once I'd cut it out, and then I put a little cardboard circle, a little punched out cardboard circle to make a bottom, and then I painted it all. I painted it in a metallic, and I made a sweet little chalice for my witch's cottage. That's something that you can do. I'm not going to show you today, mostly because it's glued into the witch's cottage, but I will link the video up in the iCard. So that is, you know, something that I use these small ones for. But as I say, if you can get one that's got the appropriate spacing, a little patty pan, muffin case, tray thing, yeah, is something that people really like doing. As I say, I've just never got hold of any packaging that would work. For my next make, I'm looking at making an ornamental piece. Now this is something that is kind of based on real things, but is also very much out of my imagination. So if it doesn't make any sense while I'm explaining it to you, hopefully it will once I'm done. For this, I want 2 sizes of circular blisters, one smaller than the other. You can go with any size you want. I've got bigger ones, I've got smaller ones. I just decided I'd go with these. Now, the smaller one is deeper. I'm not going to let that bother me too much. I could have done it with different size ones if it was an issue, but I quite like the idea of that because I want to actually use this potentially in the future as a piece for a floral display. So I'm quite happy with the idea of that being deeper. It sort of fits with that kind of look. So I've got 2 different sizes and I'm going to cut one out of each, and I'm also going to prepare the other piece that I'm going to need. So I've cut out my 2 pieces, my 2 blisters from the packaging, and I've got a piece of toothpick. Now this piece of toothpick is approximately 5/8 of an inch. It's 5/8 of an inch for no other reason than that looked about the right kind of height. Now when I actually glue this together, I'm going to glue that piece onto the larger of the 2, which is going to be the bottom, and then the bigger one is going to go on the top, and it's going to make something resembling a cake stand, but for the purposes of holding flowers or plants or something like that. It's sort of been inspired by a lot of things that people have been producing over Christmas, and quite often you will get these display pieces where you've got a bit that's higher up and then a bit that's lower down, and I just decided to make one. I'm going to paint these first before I attempt to glue them because I figure it's going to be easier. So I'm going to begin with my basic black undercoat, and then I'm going to go with a metallic. I'm not going to go with silver this time. I'm not sure if I'm going to go with a sort of brassy gold colour or my favourite copper, but we'll see what I'm feeling like when I actually get to that point. So I'm going to start with the black paint, which again is just my ordinary matte black acrylic. As I said before, a couple of thinner coats, because otherwise you won't get an even coverage. You can't get a even coverage on plastic like this with one coat. It just moves around too much. So that's what I'm going to go and do. So I decided I was going to go with the metallic copper. I had actually got these all painted up in black, and it wasn't until they were painted and I'd got to do something with them. I thought, which one do I go for? And I went through the colours and I decided I was going to go with my favourite copper. I do like the way that the copper turns out over the black. You get a very good effect that looks like it's not cleaned. Now the next step is to glue this together, and I've got my glue waiting. So it's a little bit on the tacky side, and I'm just going to apply a bit to the end of the one piece, and I'm going to stick that onto the bottom in the middle like so. Now I'm going to leave this to dry because obviously I want it cured before I start trying to mess about with that piece. So we'll I'll give that a bit of curing time and then I'll be back. The glue has cured on that piece and it's now quite secure. I wouldn't put too much pressure on it because obviously it's only a small area in which is actually joined, but it's enough that I could work with it. Now you could, if you wanted, use a similar method to what I've done now to make a old-fashioned style candlestick with one of these, using that as the candlestick, that as the candle, painted appropriately obviously, and then you just want to put maybe a little handle out of some rolled card glued onto the side. But it's going okay. Now I'm going to put a little bit of glue onto the top of the cocktail stick, and then I'm going to try and get this in the middle. So I've got to do this by eye and from a distance, so we will just... No, of course I didn't do it first time, did I? So I wanted something like that. Now again, I've got to allow some curing time. Allow some more gluing time even. I'm going to have to allow some curing time, possibly a bit longer, because I do want it to be nice and dry. And I'll do it this way, I think. I'll try to. And hopefully that looks about right. And then I will show you what it's looked like. I may dress it up for the final bits, I may not, it all depends how I'm feeling. And here we have my first 3 pieces of miniature treasure from trash. We've got my bakeware, which realistically needs to go into a kitchen. We've got my little pie tin based on the enamelled original, and then we've got my copper decorative piece, which I'm still waiting for the glue to completely cure on. Now I've actually decided against putting a plant or flowers in it at the moment because I don't know where I'm going to put it, and I don't know if I'm going to need something that's dead or something to match a particular scheme in a room. I do know that the copper will make it fit because it's a colour that I'm enjoying working into my doll's house as I go. But there we have them, 3 pieces that would have been made from blister packaging that would otherwise have gone into the rubbish bin. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, please like, comment and subscribe, and maybe even ring that notification bell if you want to know when I post a new video. I post videos most weeks, normally on a Friday, with a few bonus videos here and there in between. And this is the start of something with my trash to miniature treasures. So until the next one, bye!